This is Ed Driscoll for PJmedia.com, and we're talking today with the co-founder and CEO of PJmedia.com, Roger L. Simon, and Mrs. Roger L. Simon, Sheryl Longin. They're the authors of a new play whose script is now available from New Criterion Books, the first title published under the imprimatur of the magazine edited and published by PJM's Roger Kimball, with an introduction written by PJM's Ronald Radosh. It's called The Party Line, a play in 2 acts, and it's a play that focuses on 2 historical figures, both of whom longtime readers of PJM should be familiar with on some level, Walter Duranty of the New York Times and Dutch politician Pim Fortuyn. And with all of that out of the way, Roger and Sheryl, thank you for stopping by today.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Roger and Sheryl, we might as well start right at the beginning and ask, what made you decide to intermingle the lives of Durante and Fortuyn, figures who lived over very different time periods in the 20th century?
You go first, Roger.
All right, I will do Durante, and then you can do Fortuyn. Durante was a Brit who was a kind of a bohemian who lived in Paris and sort of lucked into a job that was a lifetime, annuity of a certain sort. He was a kind of a layabout, sort of hip journalist of the period who ended up being the Moscow correspondent of the New York Times. He actually wanted to be a novelist and later a screenwriter, neither of which he succeeded at. But he succeeded like gangbusters in being the most famous foreign correspondent of the time because he had the Moscow assignment at a period in the 20s and 30s when the big news story was the Soviet Union and this great experiment that was supposedly going on there. And this is why he became infamous in our eyes, is that he lied about this experiment. Most specifically, but in many areas, but most specifically in Stalin's forced starvation of the Ukrainians, which some people estimated at over 1 million people or many millions. It's hard to know. I mean, a lot of people got killed, got starved, and by Stalin, and he whitewashed this. The other thing that's interesting about this is that he was not really a communist. A lot of people who know about Durante think he was a communist. He was a more modern figure than that. He was sort of a Duranteist, meaning he was interested in all this for his own advancement. He knew he would be famous and powerful by being the Moscow correspondent, so he went along with Stalin to keep the job.
But he wasn't a true believer in Stalinism or communism.
Not at all. In fact, he said that, in fact, this is not just in our play. It is in our play. But in the historical record, he said on several occasions that communism is okay for the Russians, meaning they're backwards, but it would never work in the West.
And now, how about Pim Fortuyn?
Pim Fortuyn was a Dutch politician who was assassinated almost 10 years ago now, when he was poised to become possibly the next prime minister of the Netherlands. He started out, and he was an openly gay, some would say flamboyantly gay, former Marxist professor of sociology, a man certainly of the left, who became very, and really became very, very, very troubled by what was happening to Dutch freedoms in the Netherlands with the influx of a lot of Muslim immigrants and no assimilation, and the ways in which that was impacting the rights of Dutch citizens to live freely the way that they had before. So that's what sort of got him involved in politics. And a lot of people, especially in Western Europe and the United States, unfairly categorized him as somebody far-right, anti-Muslim, anti-immigration, and he was, nothing of the sort. He was pro-freedom and pro-human rights, and didn't believe that if people came to the Netherlands, then they must want to live the way that the Netherlands had decided that people should live. So he was very, very outspoken and got tons of death threats, as you can imagine, nonstop, and was assassinated on the eve of the election by an animal rights activist, actually, but it was for his outspoken views.
Now, I know you've both been working on this play for quite some time. How did the idea initially come to you, and how long has it taken to finally reach fruition?
Roger? You go.
Sigh. Plays take a long, long time. I don't even know. I mean, I think Sheryl had the first idea to put this in play form, but I immediately knew that she was right because we wanted to deal with certain ideas in it. Now, people often ask whether we started doing this before or after the Durante Prize came up as an idea. But actually, I think it was before. But I can't be for sure.
I think it was before because it's been a long. I mean, it was a long kind of thinking process. It wasn't such a long writing process, but it was a long thinking process and research process. Really, I would say it's hard to say exactly when and how we came up with the idea of interweaving the stories of Walter Duranty and Pim Fortuyn, but we started with the Walter Duranty period, and then went from there.
I mean, Steve, we wanted to connect what was going on back then in the 20s and 30s with Stalinism, obviously with what you could call jihadism today, and the response of the public and the press to both, which are, as the play points out, surprisingly similar.
And by the way, as your cover depicts, Durante lost his left leg, which is an interesting bit of symbolism in and of itself. There's a marvelous scene in the play where he asks a young female Soviet assistant to tap his wooden leg for good luck. How did he lose his leg, and how did it impact his life?
He lost his leg by an act of God, as it were. I mean, it was a train accident. So it had no particular import politically. He wasn't in it. If it had, it would have been in the play, I can assure you. But it was something he exploited as he does in the play. But he was just a guy with a wooden leg, like Captain Hook but there wasn't a whale.
It was, just a very unfortunate for him train accident.
Right.
And we should mention there's a third historic figure in the play, and that's Aleister Crowley. Now, he was the road manager for Led Zeppelin and Ozzy Osbourne, right?
He could have been.
They might have wished, yeah. He was, an occultist, I guess, is what he would have called himself. And he was very friendly with Walter Duranty in Walter Duranty's young, youthful years, pre his time at the New York Times. And he conducted a bunch of kind of famous sort of orgies in Paris to call forth Satan, basically. That's about as clear as I can see. And Walter Duranty participated in them. Roger, what did you?
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that he's in there for color, but he's also in there because it gives you an idea of what Duranty was really coming from, that kind of early 20th century bohemianism that had really nothing to do with communism. It had everything to do with, although they might have been fellow travelers to say they were actually all was to do with narcissistic self-interest, and in the case of Crowley, having as many women as he possibly could.
And for Durante, I would say that was probably also true.
Also true, yeah.
And, the whole thing was about calling forth power, to accrue power, which is also clearly what Durante was interested in. But interestingly enough, he was engaged in those activities at the very time that he was first, contacted by the New York Times and got his job, and then went straight off to do some more correspondence for them. And, it's unclear that anyone ever did any background checking just to see that, he was...
I would say probably not.
Right.
And the other thing is that there's another character in the play that I think we should mention who was based on a historical figure, but we fictionalized him. Because what Sheryl and I were going after in this play is not just exposing who Durante was and who Fortuyn was, because they're interesting historical figures and you can find out about them in a variety of places, but to investigate what makes people change in political situations, which is something that we've all lived, and I know you've lived in the last decade and more. And we have a character in the play that we call Sid Brody in the play, who was actually mostly based on a real-life guy named Eugene Lyons, Eugene Lyons was the UPI reporter from New York, a kind of very traditionally ultra-left-wing Jewish guy who went to Moscow thinking he was going to see the future and all that. And when he got there, he actually changed and said, uh-oh, mass murder's going on here. And of course, he started to report it, and he got kicked out of the Soviet Union for doing that. And he went back to New York, and there he started to tell the truth. And of course, the Ritchie people of New York, what he called the penthouse Bolsheviks, all came down on him because they assumed he was a liar and that Durante was telling the truth.
Which is a great phrase, the penthouse Bolsheviks. It'd be kind of fun to see that get reintroduced into the vernacular.
Yes, it should, because that's, it's the forerunner of radical chic and limousine liberals and all those. But Eugene Lyons came up with that phrase in the 30s.
When you're writing a play about such politically charged incidents, how do you balance between telling the story, giving the audience the necessary expository information to understand what's going on, but avoid writing what becomes effectively agitprop?
Well, I think what Roger said, what we started, the starting point for us was really not, although it's about politics, it was a much deeper question for us about why do people change? Why do some people change their worldviews when circumstances in the world become very dramatic and apparent to everybody? I mean, I'm obviously speaking about September 11th. And we all went through varying degrees of reactions, different kinds of reactions to that time. And then the dust sort of settled, and some people, didn't change at all, finally, and some people did. And we were struggling, and it could be family members and husbands and wives and brothers and sisters and parents. So we were trying to figure out why is that? Why, when you see something happen that doesn't go with what you thought, why do some people are not able to see that and process that, and other people move forward with what they now have learned? And so that's why it wasn't we didn't feel like we were writing this for like in any kind of partisan way. We were hoping and hope that it's for all sorts of people who I'm sure also wrestle with those questions, and it was easier to address it in a time period far away, not that far away, but than it was now, because we still don't really know why it is that people have lived through these things and can't see the truth.
And the other question, and tangential to that, is the question of what should people do in the arts to express views and to reach new audiences. And I think it's our intention here to present this as a play. I mean, to some degree, I'm tarnished maybe by being who I am at PJM. But I'd like not to be with this. I mean, this is a play, and plays Agitprop maybe has its place, but it's not a big place. I mean, the best theater, the best films, the best novels are not Agitprop. They're more like life. I mean, and that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to, copy life and make people experience these things, and then, they come up with their own opinions on it, I'm sure.
Now, have you already begun plans to stage the party line in a theatrical setting?
Yes. Well, we're not talking about it.
Okay.
Because the reason we're not talking about it is not to be cute, but you know, when you start offering things to actors and producers and so forth, these are confidential business questions, really. And obviously that's the intention, because we wrote it as a play. And because of Roger Kimball and all of that, and that it's a fairly literate thing, it got published, which is great. And now a lot of people are reading it, but it's intended for the stage.
There's been a lot of talk after the election about the impotence that many conservatives feel concerning pop culture. Do you have any advice for those conservatives, both in Hollywood and out, who are angry with the bias of its output or who are trying to get their own products produced?
Well, I would say that, and I know Roger's, talked about this and written about this a lot, but I mean, you just have to, it's not easy to do anything creative, or, I mean, to get anything, any movie made, any play produced, any novel published, it's never easy. And so you just have to do it, and don't set yourself up for failure by thinking they're out to, keep me down and not they're suppressing my views. Because the truth is, yes, that's true, but the same thing happens, in a myriad of other ways. So you just have to really just do it, and then persevere, and don't let don't make yourself a victim before you already are.
I couldn't agree more. I happen to agree with my wife, which is a good thing. But I mean, I think it's really necessary not to be a victocrat in the arts, as our elder would say. I mean, go do it. I mean, and learn how to do it, and practice, and get better at it, and express yourself. And it's easy enough for people on the right to criticize Sean Penn and Oliver Stone, and fine, okay, criticize them. But every minute you spend criticizing those people, if you want to be an artist yourself, is 1 minute you didn't spend doing your own thing.
That sounds like great advice to wrap up this interview with. We've been talking with Roger L. Simon and Sheryl Longin about their new play, The Party Line. It's published by Encounter Books and available from Amazon.com and your local bookstore. And Roger and Sheryl, good luck with the play, and thank you for stopping by today.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for having us.